I once thought that the moment I walked down the aisle would be the realization of a dream. I imagined smiling happily, holding hands with the man I chose as my partner, surrounded by warm light and applause. But now, sitting in the hotel room bathed in the gray glow of sunset, I only feel my chest tighten painfully, as if being crushed. The wedding dress still sits in the box, never tried on since it was first made. The wedding invitation, which I had chosen every detail of, now lies crumpled on the floor. All the dreams I had of the perfect wedding are now nothing more than a plan filled with tears and disappointment. We used to be the ideal couple, or at least, that's how others saw us. Since Aiden and I announced our engagement early last year, friends were constantly congratulating us. They called me the final winner after a love that had lasted nearly 10 years, interrupted by youth, college, and brief breakups. But they never saw the dark side behind that shine. From the early days of wedding planning, I noticed something wasn't right. Aiden didn't seem excited at all. When I eagerly sent him photos of wedding dress samples, he replied with a simple word, "Okay." When I sent him a list of songs I wanted to play at the wedding, he responded after 3 days, "I'm busy, you pick." At first, I reassured myself that men just don't care about these details, but when I had to do everything, from booking venues, meeting vendors, to managing the budget, alone, while Aiden spent his weekends playing games with friends or drinking with Jay, I started feeling alone. Jay, Aiden's best man, his childhood friend, had always been an inseparable part of our relationship. They had been friends since kindergarten, and Jay was present at every milestone in Aiden's life. The first prom, the first day of college, even when Aiden proposed to me. But Jay never truly liked me. I could feel it, even without concrete proof. And what was worse, Aiden never stood up for me. One time, after a reunion, Jay half-jokingly said in front of everyone, "Wow, didn't expect Aiden to pick the girl who flirted with our whole group, huh?" I froze. The room went silent for a few seconds. I forced a laugh. "Jay, come on. That was back in 6th grade and I never kissed any of you." Everyone laughed, and the topic quickly shifted. But I couldn't forget Aiden's look at that moment. Not anger, not defense, but embarrassment, as if he too thought the comment had some truth to it. That night, when it was just the two of us, I asked Aiden directly, "Are you okay with comments like that?" He shrugged, pouring himself a beer. "You're being too sensitive. Jay was just joking. We've known each other for life. That's just how we talk." Normal? Normal when his best friend calls me the girl who flirted with the whole group? Normal when he doesn't stand up for me? I felt like I was being pushed out of my own story, rewritten, distorted, and laughed at like some kind of entertainment. I thought the worst part was Aiden didn't see the problem. I had always been the one carrying the load. I was the one managing the budget, hunting for sales, cutting costs to the penny, even taking on a part-time job to cover wedding expenses, while Aiden casually unwound with friends every weekend. He always said, "You're better at it. I'm at ease when you handle it." No, he didn't give me responsibility because he trusted me. He gave it to me because he didn't want to be involved. Another time, when I was exhausted from work deadlines and rushing to prepare slides for the speech, I texted Aiden asking him to print a few thank you cards. He read the message and didn't reply. Later that evening when I called him, he laughed over the phone. "Oh, I totally forgot. Jay invited me to watch the last season's football game. We can print it tomorrow." No way. This is my wedding. Ours. But why does all the emotion, expectation, and burden fall on me? I used to think that if I tried hard enough, he'd notice. If I put up with enough, he'd understand. But no, the harder I tried, the more I faded in his eyes. I was no longer his lover, his partner. I was just the event planner. And when Jay started joking that he'd expose me in his speech, saying I was the girl who had been with the whole group, I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt scared, not because of Jay's words, but because of Aiden's silence. That silence said it all. A marriage cannot be built on one person sacrificing and the other disregarding. And if the person I love doesn't protect me against dirty words, against humiliation, is it still love? I had gotten used to Jay joking about me. From the day I blurted out that I once had a crush on him in 6th grade, Jay seemed to find endless amusement in it. "My ex is here," he would often quip whenever I entered a group meetup. Everyone would laugh. I would laugh too, because what else could I do? Cry? Overreact? Or break the unwritten rule of not being too sensitive with close friends? But last week, the boundary was crossed. That day, we organized a small gathering at my and Aiden's apartment. Just a pizza night, cold beer, and a casual discussion about wedding plans, or so I thought. Jay arrived early, bringing a box of craft beer and a smile full of meaning. When I came out of the kitchen with a plate of snacks, I caught Jay's eye glancing at me. Then he turned and whispered something to 2 other groomsmen, his face filled with mocking laughter. When I got closer, he patted the shoulder of the guy next to him and said, "Hey, remember yesterday when I talked about the bride experiencing the whole groom's friends thing? Hilarious." I froze. A faint, twisted smile spread across my face like a cracked mask. One of the groomsmen, Evan, quickly glanced at me, then snapped, "Jay, not cool. Don't bring that joke up again." "Oh, come on." Jay raised an eyebrow. "I just said, if someone tried a lot of options before finding the right one, it's a valuable journey, right?" He looked straight at me, half smiling, half challenging. "No one says that's bad. You're marrying Aiden now." I gripped the snack plate tightly, forcing a laugh. I've never dated anyone besides Aiden, except for that childhood crush in 7th grade that you guys keep bringing up. My voice tried to remain calm. Jay shrugged, turning to Aiden, as if waiting for a response. Aiden laughed. A forced smile, then he took a sip of his beer, turning away as if he hadn't heard anything. Not a word in my defense, not a shared glance. In that moment, I felt my heart drop. After the party ended, I cleaned up alone in the kitchen. Aiden stood near the balcony, lighting a cigarette, the one thing he swore he had quit. I didn't bother speaking up, but when he came back into the kitchen, I couldn't stay silent. "Are you happy?" I asked, still washing the glasses. "What?" "Jay said I was tried by the whole group of your friends before choosing you. You laughed. You didn't say anything. You left me standing there alone, letting them insult me." Aiden frowned. "You're overreacting. Jay was just joking. I told him to stop, didn't I?" "Stop? Where? You laughed. You turned away. Is that how you protect me?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Is that how you treat your fiancé?" Aiden fell silent. He placed his beer can on the counter and spoke quietly. "I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I didn't want to turn everything into a drama." I laughed, a bitter, sharp laugh. "Oh, I get it. I'm the one making a big deal. Not Jay, not the filthy words. It's me, because I dare to be uncomfortable when I'm humiliated." That night, I slept alone on the couch. My back ached, my head spun, and my heart was shattered. I'm not a weak woman. I've been through broken relationships, family losses, even carrying debts when my father was hospitalized. But I had never felt so betrayed. Not by an outsider, but by the one I was about to marry. The next morning, 2 groomsmen, Evan and Mason, texted me. They apologized for letting things go too far. They said Jay was planning to put those things into his best man speech. A speech that, according to Jay, if I get the mic before the bride checks it, it'll be a blast. I asked, "What does he mean by that?" Evan went silent. Then he texted, "He was joking." But the way he said it made us feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? This is my wedding. The day I thought I would be respected, loved. Yet, a close friend is planning to turn it into a stage to humiliate me, with my fiancé's silent approval. That night, I demanded a direct conversation with Aiden. I don't want Jay to say anything during the wedding. No speech, no microphone, no more jokes. Aiden frowned. "You're overreacting. Jay won't really do it. He just wants to make people laugh. Make people laugh by humiliating me in front of friends and family? You think that's fun?" I slammed my hand on the table. I can't marry someone who won't stand up for me. Aiden looked at me, his gaze wavering, but he didn't apologize. He didn't admit Jay was wrong. He just repeated, "I'll talk to him." I'm sure Jay didn't mean it. I know him. I nodded. And I don't want to know anything more. I just want a wedding where I don't have to feel humiliated. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to stop there. Jay was just the tipping point. The full cup was Aiden. His indifference, his disregard for my feelings, the way he never put me first. And I started to understand, a wedding can't be happiness if the bride walks down the aisle with a broken heart and a husband who never dares to stand between her and the world. When people say, a punch doesn't hurt as much as prolonged silence, I never thought it would be so true. But with Aiden, it is precisely this silence that is eroding me every day. Not the shouting, not the aggression, but a cold, calculated indifference. He always stands on the outside, watching my pain as if it's just a passing drizzle. After everything Jay said, from the crude jokes to the made-up stories, from the plot to turn me into a joke on our wedding day, Aiden still did nothing. No straightforward conversation, no cutting the mic, no removing Jay from the speech, just, "I'll talk to him." An empty promise, just like so many times before. Everything exploded on a seemingly ordinary morning. I woke up with a throbbing headache, sunlight piercing through the curtains directly into my eyes, and an email from the hospital. Last week's emergency bill was denied by insurance. I opened my eyes wide, thinking it was a system error. I still had insurance, right? I checked my account. Logged in. The personal health insurance account had been canceled since January. I was stunned. Couldn't believe it. I clearly remembered Aiden telling me he had added me to his insurance plan as his fiancé at the beginning of this year, when I left my old job to join the new company, where the benefits hadn't been activated yet. We had discussed it thoroughly, and I asked at least 3 times. He nodded, even joked, "You worry too much. Let me handle the insurance stuff." And now I found out, not only did he not add me, but he also canceled his own coverage. I called him. My voice trembled. "Did you cancel the health insurance?" A pause. "Aiden? Yeah, I forgot to tell you. I was planning to find the right time to tell you." I almost yelled, "Since January? You waited until August to find the right time?" He sighed, his voice nonchalant, as if discussing forgetting to buy milk. I just wanted to save. Wedding costs were more than expected. Band, food, decorations. I went silent. I couldn't comprehend. No apology, no regret, just a cold calculation. I laughed bitterly, asking, "And I was the item that could be cut?" Aiden hesitated. "Don't say it like that. You know it's not like that. You earn more than I do." "Yes, I earned more. I carried most of the costs. I even took on a second job in the evenings, but not to be treated like an unnecessary insurance risk. The headache turned into a numbness that spread across my temples. I hung up without saying another word, and in that moment, I realized something. Aiden never saw me as someone who needed protection. He saw me as a partner in the wedding planning project, an efficient coworker, someone who could work 3 times harder, cut costs, take on responsibility, endure, step back, but absolutely not be a hassle, not to ask for anything, not to react. I packed up my laptop, notebook, wedding documents, everything, and shoved it all into my backpack. I needed to leave this apartment, this air thick with indifference and calculation. I went to my best friend Julia's house and told her everything. From Jay to the speech, from the ring I took off to the canceled health insurance. Julia didn't say anything at first. She just hugged me. And for the first time in months, I cried uncontrollably like a child. "You don't have to marry this guy," Julia said, her voice firm. "Not because everyone knows. Not because the invites have been printed. Not because you've loved him since you were 17. You have the right to stop." That night, Aiden called me. I answered. He asked, "Where are you going?" I replied, "Somewhere safe." He sighed. "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't think the insurance thing would make you react like that." I said coldly, "It's not about the insurance, Aiden. It's because you chose not to protect me, from my body to my dignity, time and time again." He was silent. I continued. "From Jay's filthy comments, to you not speaking up, to canceling my insurance behind my back. All of it has one common denominator. You put your convenience and pride over my safety, and that can't be called love." He hesitated. "I just want the wedding to go smoothly. And I want a safe marriage. Clearly, we want different things." The call ended. I hung up. That night, I opened a new document. Wedding cancellation plan. Steps to prepare. Not because I've decided to leave, but because for the first time in many years, I allowed myself to have a choice. A choice not to be forced to keep going for the sake of appearances. Not to endure because everyone already knows. Not to forgive because all men are a little insensitive. A choice to protect myself if no one else will. After hanging up with Aiden, I sat blankly by the window at Julia's house. Outside, thunder rumbled intermittently, as if the world itself was echoing the anger in my heart. But what tormented me the most wasn't the anger. It was the feeling of being looked down upon. I used to think that if I loved someone enough, I could forgive them. I believed that if I worked hard, sacrificed, and compromised, love would triumph, that all the hurts were just phases, and the man I chose would eventually understand and appreciate me. But love is not a competition of who can endure more, and I started to realize, every time I held back, he saw it as a reason to do even more. 3 days later, I returned to the apartment to pack my personal belongings. Aiden was home, and it seemed like he had been waiting. He didn't look at me when he opened the door, just stepped aside. The air between us was so thick it was almost suffocating. "I want to talk," he spoke first, his voice trying to remain calm. I looked at him, silent. "About everything," he continued. "About Jay, about the insurance, about the wedding." I crossed my arms. "Go ahead." He sat down on the chair, his fingers intertwined. "I didn't think everything would hurt you this much. I admit, I handled it wrong. But you have to understand, I'm under a lot of pressure. This wedding is not just for you." I laughed bitterly. "Not just for me? Then why am I the one doing almost everything? I'm the one managing the budget, making the plan book, choosing the venue, working with the printer, ordering the cake, making the guest list, booking hotel rooms, and you're under a lot of pressure because you have to wear a suit and show up on time? Aiden was taken aback, but still tried to argue. I just didn't know you felt this bad. You didn't say anything. I didn't say anything? I almost cried. Aiden, I've been saying it nonstop. I asked you about Jay. You said, that's just how Jay is. I asked you about how I felt. You said I was overreacting. I told you about work pressure, the exhaustion from planning the wedding. You turned it into a demand for affection and said I was being cold. How many more times do I have to say it for you to understand? He stood up, pacing back and forth. His voice rose. So what do you want now? Cancel the wedding? Make a big scene? Let our friends, family, everyone see us as a failed couple? I looked straight into his eyes. Are you worried about what people will think? Or are you worried about losing a wife who carries everything so you don't have to take responsibility? He fell silent. Actually, I was afraid too. I was afraid of disappointing people. I was afraid of losing you. I was afraid of being judged. But now I realize the scariest thing is marrying someone who doesn't truly see you as a partner. Aiden took a deep breath. I don't know how to make you happy. I laughed bitterly. You don't need to make me happy. You just need to not let your friends smear me at the wedding. Don't cancel my insurance behind my back. Don't shirk all responsibilities and then expect me to endure. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need a decent person. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then he spoke. So, have you decided? Are we still getting married? I looked up, heart aching. Why do you always turn everything into a choice question, as if the fault is completely mine? Why isn't it, I will change, or I want to make things right? Why is it always me who has to decide? He answered without hesitation. Because I can't stand ambiguity. Either we get married or we don't. I need to know so I can move on with my life. I stood up gently but decisively. Then you should prepare for the possibility of no. I can't marry someone who only sees himself as the center of every decision. I left the apartment with a small suitcase. It was raining again. I didn't bring an umbrella, but I didn't care. The rain soaked my hair, wet my shoulders, but my heart felt lighter than ever. Not because I was decisive, but because I knew I no longer feared the breakdown. I fear silence. Fear being disregarded. Fear being manipulated and worn down until I forget who I am. And I am reclaiming every piece of myself, starting by walking out that door. I didn't look back. When the elevator door closed behind me and the sound of the suitcase wheels echoed down the rainy hallway, I knew this was not just leaving the house. It was a break, a conclusion forming, even without any formal declaration. I didn't cry. No more tears to shed. I only felt cold. Cold from the rain outside, and cold because my heart was being peeled away, layer by layer, down to the core. The first 2 days, I didn't receive any calls from Aiden. No text messages, no apologies, no requests for reconciliation. Just one call from his mother, asking about the wedding situation and saying, I'm sure you're just upset over something small, right? I've already ordered the wedding cake. I politely declined to talk further. I hung up, opened my phone, and removed Aiden's access from all our shared accounts: Drive, the wedding budget, the guest list, and the wedding website I had spent hours creating. Every action made my hands shake. But I knew I was slowly regaining control of my own life. On the third night, I received a message from Jay. I heard you and Aiden are tense. It's not because of a few jokes I made, right? If anything really offended you, I'm sorry, but don't ruin the whole wedding over something small. I stared at those words as if looking at the face of someone who slapped me with raw audacity. A half-hearted apology, accompanied by blatant blame. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because Jay didn't deserve to hear anything from me anymore. On the fourth day, Aiden sent an email. I've thought a lot. I don't deny that I'm at fault. But things are going too far. You can say directly, do you still want to marry me? If not, let me know soon so I can handle everything. Cold, indifferent, almost administrative. Not a single question about my feelings. No asking, are you okay? Just yes or no. And I realized this was the issue. With Aiden, everything was a system of buttons to push. Plans, schedules, decisions. Marriage, to him, was just a box to tick off in the life plan. Graduate, get a job, marry, buy a house, have kids. What about me? I was just support software, helping him complete his goals without encountering system errors. That night, I cried for the first time in days. But not because of Aiden. It was because I had allowed myself to accept things that were undeserving for far too long. I remembered the nights I stayed up until 2 a.m. editing the wedding timeline slides. The days I sat calculating every little cost, like biodegradable straws or adding fresh petals to the table. The times Aiden shrugged and said, "It's up to you, as long as it looks good." I remembered the time I got seriously ill in April, but still tried to attend the wedding tasting because Aiden didn't want to go alone. I remembered the time I asked him to speak up when Jay started crossing boundaries, and he turned away, laughing awkwardly. I remembered all his silences, and every silence was a wound. On the fifth day, I went to meet a lawyer, not to sue, not to ask for money, but to understand my rights if I canceled the wedding, considering the prenuptial agreement, the deposit, and the financial obligations involved. The lawyer listened to my story without a word of judgment. At the end of the session, she said, "You're still young, and you have a whole life ahead to choose the right person. You don't need to accept living in indifference before even entering marriage. If you stop now, no one has the right to call you weak. You're being wise." That night, Aiden texted again. "We need to talk. This can't go on. I need a final answer." I rewrote it 3 times before hitting send. "Aiden, I have loved you a lot, but love is not a reason to endure indifference, disregard, and irresponsibility. I cannot marry someone who makes me sacrifice my own values and peace of mind. I choose to cancel the wedding. I wish you happiness. M." When I put the phone down, a part of me still trembled. Fear, emptiness, loneliness. But beside me was Julia, my mother, the people who were ready to hold me when I collapsed, without judgment, without demand, and most importantly, myself. I am here, for the first time in many years, standing up for myself. Canceling a wedding is a solitary act. No applause, no wedding dress, no flowers, no hundreds of eyes on you with congratulations. Just curious looks, probing questions filled with judgment. What's going on? You must have had a fight, right? Was there someone else involved? In the first week after sending Aiden the final text, I received dozens of calls from people who hadn't called me in the entire past year. People who had never asked me, "Are you tired? Zrenia, do you need help?" While I was struggling to organize the wedding alone, now sent crying emojis and asked, "I heard you canceled the wedding? Why so sudden?" I didn't reply. No reason was enough, and I owed no one an explanation except myself. I moved out of the old apartment and went to live with my mother. In difficult times like this, I felt that being with my mother would make me feel safe. I took the necessities and left behind the emotionally valuable items that now only weighed me down. The wedding dress was donated to an organization supporting women in difficult circumstances. I couldn't keep it, not because it was ugly, but because it had been a symbol of a dream with the wrong person. I changed my phone number, removed Aiden from social media. A final move, like removing a rusted lock from my wrist, light as a feather. 3 days after the decision to cancel the wedding, I received a message from my mother. Margaret and Aiden are in the living room. They want to talk. I took a deep breath, wiped my hands quickly, and walked out of the room as if I were stepping onto the stage to face the past I had tried to close the door on. Margaret, Aiden's mother, had always been a calm, polite woman, and I had genuinely respected her. As for Aiden, he sat on the couch as if forced into an unwanted interrogation, arms crossed, his face tense. "Hello, ma'am," I said softly, sitting down next to my mother. Margaret gave a forced smile, but her eyes clearly showed concern. "My dear, I don't want to impose, but I heard you've decided to cancel the wedding and haven't explained why to Aiden. I really want to understand what happened." I hadn't had a chance to respond when Aiden cut in, his voice sharp. "She says she feels disrespected from some trivial things. You know, Jay made a joke and she blew it out of proportion. I said a few words of apology and suddenly I'm the bad guy. She thinks she's testing me." Margaret turned to her son, frowning slightly. But Aiden kept going, his voice rising. "I've stayed silent long enough. I tried waiting for her to calm down, but she disappeared, didn't call back, and only sent one text, canceling the wedding. Mom, think about it. Who does that? Isn't it just childish tantrums?" I looked at him, a calm but cold stare. I had heard enough. "You think this is a tantrum?" I laughed dryly. "Aiden, this didn't start with Jay, and it doesn't end with your silence." I stood up, looking straight into his eyes. "This started with the times you ignored me. When I did 90% of the wedding prep work, you said, 'You're better at it.' When Jay called me the linking object of the group, you laughed instead of reacting. When you canceled my health insurance, you didn't even inform me." Margaret remained silent, her gaze growing heavy. I walked toward her, choking up. "I'm sorry if this causes you pain, but I cannot marry a man who chooses silence when my dignity is being lowered. A man who doesn't realize how much he's hurt others." I cried, no longer from pain, but because I could finally say what I had buried for months. Margaret looked at her son, her voice softening but filled with restraint. "Aiden, I've watched you grow, knowing you're stubborn, quiet, but I never thought you'd be this arrogant." Aiden turned, stunned. "Mom, you think I'm here to defend you?" Margaret sighed. "I came to understand, but what I see is a man shirking responsibility, blaming everyone else, except himself." "Mom," Aiden tried to interrupt. "Be quiet and listen." Her voice grew sharper. "You let her carry everything. Then when she was in pain, you called her sensitive. When she was exhausted, you said, 'Don't overdo it.' And now, when she decides to leave, you dare sit there and call it a tantrum." Margaret turned to me, softening. "My dear, if you really endured all that, then you did the right thing. I'm sorry I didn't realize it sooner." I couldn't say anything. I just bowed my head, tears streaming down again, this time because I knew. At least someone saw me. Aiden stood up suddenly, his face flushed. "Fine," he said. "You win. If everyone thinks I'm such a bad guy, then cancel the wedding. I don't need anyone's pity." Then he left the house without looking back. Margaret stayed sitting, her hands clenched. She sighed. I raised him with the hope that he would know how to love someone good. But perhaps he's still too immature to understand that love isn't about holding on, it's about supporting, respecting. She stood up and placed her hand on my shoulder. If you need me to testify for anything, I'll be ready. That night, I sat alone in my room, reopening my old journal. I added a new line. Some losses turn out to be a liberation. And sometimes, the person who understands us the most isn't the one we're about to marry, but their mother. On an afternoon, 3 months after the wedding was called off, while sitting in a small cafe, I received a message from an old friend. Aiden still says, "You went crazy and ruined everything just because of a joke." I stared at the message for a long time. Not hurt, not angry, just a strange feeling, like looking at an old painting I once loved, only to realize it was never mine. I didn't reply. I didn't go online to explain myself. I didn't make any phone calls to clarify, because I had learned this. You don't need anyone to believe in you, as long as you believe in yourself enough. I sat writing in the notebook that had followed me through the journey since I removed my engagement ring. I once dreamed of a wedding. Now I don't. I dream of a life where I am the main character, not the backstage organizer, not the one who compromises. I don't have a ring on my finger, but I have self-respect. I don't have a wedding, but I have a free life.